Welcome to the MadTrio podcast. This week we have the California Pariah, Jonathan Charney, James, the Fat Man Stevens.
Hello.
Rob, the old guy.
For the Rob Charney Show.
And who the fuck is this? It's Ryan Preston.
Yay.
Hey.
Yay. The MadTrio is a quadro.
It's a quadrilogy. So, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we're going to start out from a word from our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people. They have online monthly game nights on Discord, so make sure you stop by their Facebook page for event times and dates. You can also grab a free quarantined version of the game straight off their website. Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people. Thank you, Audacity. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately with Ryan's busy schedule doing something, he didn't get to comment, and so just to reopen the floor. So my version of what freedom is in the United States is I can do whatever I want without, and as long as I don't violate somebody's rights in the process, and they can do whatever they want without violating my rights in the process. And that means anything, they can be, Satanists, transgendered Christians, Hare Krishnas, lawyers.
Maybe not Hare Krishna.
I mean, so that was the discussion was, and it seems like today everybody's version of free speech is, or free speech and freedoms is, I'll do whatever I want, but I don't want you to do that. So I wanted your opinion because you and I are, I think are fairly similar in that vein.
I'm a free speech nut. I'll tell you the simplest and best way I've ever heard it put is very in line with what you were saying. My right to punch you in the face ends at the tip of your nose.
Yeah.
I'm a very classic, person of freedom. I've always been if we can do whatever we want to do, like whatever problem we need to solve as a society, if we can do that with more freedom, that's the best way to do it, as opposed to the sort of steady erosion of everything. And the willing erosion of everything is what bugs me, is when people don't understand why that particular right is important. Because it's all well and good when you think you're the one with the right idea and everyone's on your side, and then next thing you know, they're not, right. Well, James, you're the exception to everything.
Liar.
You're like the Mongols.
Well, as we
that's a comparison. Yeah. James, you're like Genghis Khan.
Yeah. That's all fine and well until you get to a point where there are things that you don't. The old example is saying, yelling fire in a movie theater when there really isn't a fire type of situation, or causing things where your speech, your free speech, causes others, right, either harm or to insurrect whatever issue it may be.
But that would be violating somebody else's rights, though.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily violating rights, but there are things that you can't do because it puts somebody in danger.
Well, see, the way I look at it is, if you're in a movie theater and somebody yells fire, in the process of yelling fire, in my opinion, you're violating somebody's rights, because yelling fire, you may have the right to do that, but because you did that interferes with their, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or whatever it actually was.
And it's not even, I don't even go so far as to like, hey, you just fucked up the movie for me.
Which is probably now I don't
reason. Get to watch, Lethal Weapon 9 or something.
At $30 a ticket? Fuck yeah. I'm going to be pissed.
But that's a civil matter. You know what I mean? That's one of those civil court things. Not exactly a Supreme Court issue, but it can put people in danger. People start running out of a burning building, and things happen, and if it's up there with inciting a riot.
Exactly.
You can't just walk into a tense situation and yell, "Let's burn this motherfucker down," and expect not to, get into some kind of trouble for it.
Not to be a repercussion to what you say. So there are repercussions to our First Amendment rights. In other words, you can speak what you want to speak until and put XYZ at the multiple things that you have that interfere with that whole right in that whole situation. So, when people talk about free speech, I have the right to talk about anything I want to talk about. Yeah, okay, to a certain degree. I mean, at what point do you start an insurrection? I mean, that's been pointed at
right.
At ex-President Trump, correct? Right? Isn't that what he is?
Yeah.
He was
former President Trump. You have to say former because he did not get removed.
Former. I can say whatever I want to say. All right. That's my free speech, right? So I'm going to say it. Take that.
How do you like dem apples?
Yeah, how do you like them? Anyway, that's my example. Apples. All right, yeah. Until it starts something, and that's so there's always limitations, basically, to everything.
Well, one of the greatest examples is, in my opinion, of free speech and rights is probably my favorite argument is the Nazi one. It's my favorite argument because as much as I hate Nazism, I'll support somebody's right to say stupid shit. Because in my opinion is
when it comes down to ideology, and that's kind of what you're talking about here, right?
Yeah, I mean that's one of them.
How do you say no? You can't say that because you're absolutely right. That's part of what free speech is about. Doesn't mean
no, you can't say that.
Right. I mean, you can stand there and say you can't say that, but the fact is they have the right to say it. And that's been the biggest argument we've had in this country about things with like the KKK and maybe we can, I'm not going to say BLM.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to say to people is you have a right to be wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
you have
absolutely.
A right to say stupid shit. You have zero right not to be offended, or to not be offended. Zero. Matter of fact, it's good for your fucking soul to be offended about some shit every now and again. It's good for you to disagree with somebody.
So
and understand why you disagree with somebody. But if you don't allow their opinion to ever be said, for one, those conversations are just gonna happen in darker and seedier rooms. And it's going to breed contempt for the people that are being, oppressed, whether you agree with Nazi being the great example, because, little to no people fucking agree with Nazis.
That's why it's my favorite example, by the way.
So it's one that we can all agree on. Again, the overwhelming majority of people can agree on fuck Nazi or white supremacy or that sort of nationalist sort of a view.
Well, let me put it this way.
But still, they have a right to have that opinion and voice that opinion.
Yeah, as sad as it is.
As long as it's not calling for violence and things like that.
So when it comes to like Nazism and all that, I've met in a handful of my life, and of everybody I've ever met, I've probably met, you could probably count them on one hand, how many people I've met that legitimately are that, the Hitler loving, person.
That are extremists?
Yes.
In whatever vein it may be. It doesn't have to be just Nazism.
This particular happens to be
maybe just idealism.
Ideologically.
I would say they're more the ideological racism versus the practice. At least from what I knew, I didn't know them to actually, put their stupid ideology into practice. And one of the reasons I said this is I posted to our Facebook page a graphic that I saw that I liked and I think speaks to us as a show is the right to agree with others is not a problem in any society. It is the right to disagree that is crucial.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the classic line of, and I never remember the actual goddamn quote, but first they came for this group of people and I said nothing. Then they came for this group of people and I said nothing. And then they came for me and no one was there to speak for me.
Right.
It's all well and good when it's your ideas that are that are quote unquote correct.
And
And everybody wants to be on the right side of history, and they want to feel like they're the forward thinking people, and not everybody, you know what I mean? Some people are very much the nope, I think that back in the day was better. And you know what is as much as I disagree with the back in the day was better speech, because everyone's got these rose colored glasses when they look at the past. I want to be able to have a conversation with that guy. I want to be able to talk to him and agree or disagree or share ideas. And hey, maybe he's got some info that I'm unaware of. Maybe I've got some that he's unaware of, he or she. I don't mean to be a dick about it. But my favorite, one of my favorite quotes of all time from Lenny Bruce. Well, from anybody, but this is from Lenny Bruce, is if you can't say fuck, you can't say fuck the government.
True. And one of the reasons I brought this up was to talk about the new trend of canceling people because of words and things they say. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I thought that the previous conversation was a healthy thing to get into, to talk about canceling people over their opinions or their thoughts. And I find it disturbing to, even if somebody has like a thought that's not far as in vogue in society. The biggest one I've seen lately is being anti-trans. And you have herds of people lining up and just saying the vilest shit to whoever does it, like J.K. Rowling, for example. And it's amazing to me that this person's opinion, instead of saying, F the B, she's whatever, they want to cancel her, they want to ruin her. I don't get this trend of not just saying, whatever. And I was hoping one of you could explain why people are so willing to cancel people who have differing opinions. Now, I can understand being sensitive to, say, people of color and trans issues, because in theory, their words have more weight and could affect people. But I don't get it.
So here's the way it gets really difficult, because growing up in my era, of course, something as simple as being homosexual was frowned upon and wasn't spoken upon.
Or more than that, it would probably have gotten you killed depending on where you were.
At times, well, that's still the case in places in this country where that could be the case. But the point is that we've come a long way as far as trying to understand. See, our whole topic on this thing has changed. We're shifting here now. So the whole topic, when we start talking about what's appropriate now, what isn't appropriate now, the whole cancel culture that you're kind of talking about is a knee-jerk reaction, I think.
Yeah.
All right? I agree. Right. I mean, right now, that's the way it goes, right? Everything is a knee-jerk reaction to everything. And then, so I think there have been a number of groups, a number of people, whatever it may be, that have been discriminated against because of the way they feel. And I understand it. I totally understand it. I mean, I understand all those issues, and I can't disagree with them. But what I do disagree with is the knee-jerk reactions to things that are either in the books or on the books or could be in the books in the past. And all of a sudden now, because it was stated or the opinion was there, now we have to burn those books. So, right? We talked about the monument thing before, and it all falls in line with that same stuff. Anything that showed that situation, whatever made, now it's going to be canceled. That's the cancel culture, or those books are being burned, or those statues are being torn down. And I think I talked about it before. I think there's a big danger in not having this knowledge still out there for history so that people understand it. It's just like Poland, God bless them, have kept the concentration camps as is so people can go and visit them and see what actually happened. And, and here we are tearing down statues of people that probably should not be glorified in any way, shape, or form, because they were horrible people. But that information should be put out there so that people understand that. Because before you know it, it's gone in history. They don't understand it. And what do they say? History is doomed to repeat itself.
Now, what about what about somebody who's going against modern cultural mores? Like the greatest example, like I said, was J.K. Rowling, who came out, was saying that trans women's rights are hurting, if I remember correctly, because it was quite a while ago I read this, was hurting young women. And she came out and said something. She was against trans women or transgenderism in general. And then you had this huge amount of people piling on her. What do you think about, that? Because I 100% agree with you. Like, as a history buff, you need to keep the history alive, or at least where people can read it. But what about something that is such a topic for the day? Or if you want to go back in time a little bit, you can even go like...
Let's remember, though, that when we're talking about free speech, we're talking about Congress shall make no law.
I would say,
you know what I'm saying?
You're right, but I would say in general, and I don't think it's as much nowadays, but I think there's a unconscious compact that at least we as Americans make, that free speech means you have a right to be an asshole. That you can...
Right. But I mean, it basically means you will not be arrested for it and things like that. Now, I disagree morally with here's the thing, you can't legislate morality.
You can
disagree morally with... Yeah, and they do. I've always said, hey, we can all vote with our dollars, right? I can choose to support a particular thing or not support a particular thing based on my ideology if I'm so inclined. There's people who don't eat meat for ethical reasons. There's people who don't use Apple products, the company, not the fruit, for
or the fruit
for moral reasons because the child slave labor and then the like. And I can sit here on the sidelines and feel it ironic when the vegan hippie for moral reasons still has an Apple phone. You know what I mean? Like okay, your priorities are a little fucked as far as I'm concerned, but you know what? That's your right.
But the hypocrisy of mankind.
People,
wearing
of course,
leather sandals and belts, right?
Yeah.
No veggie leather.
The piling on of people and things like that of, hey, let's get together and do this, and it is very knee jerk. And people can just say on Twitter or online or on Facebook, hey, everybody, we now hate this person because this reason. And people won't even look further into it. They'll just assume, like, I guess I'm supposed to hate this person now because that's what a good person does.
And to bring
okay, you can have a nuanced opinion about things, and you can not like a person, but like the art that they do. Let's say, for example, in J.K. Rowling. I can separate those two things.
You know it's amazing. You say that. I remember. This is going to sound odd, but when I grew up, society was shades of gray and TV was black and white. You had, this goes more in my dad's day, but the white hat was always the good guy. The black hat was always the bad guy. Now it's reverse. TV and story and art is all about shades of gray, and society is black and white, as in there's no middle. There's you have a nuanced argument against X. I hate you.
Yeah.
And
that is shockingly fucking true now that I'm thinking about it. You're right, because like all of the nuance that I see is with like good TV evolving into this or storytelling in general, movies or otherwise, evolving into this very, hey, you don't know whether this is the good guy or the bad guy or for what reason, and the anti-heroes and things like that. And then society has become this guy does one thing wrong, there is no path to forgiveness, fuck this dude,
And I was going to say, that was the one thing we've brought up a number of times, is we live in a post-forgiveness society. As much shit as some of my friends give me for that, is there is no path for redemption. One of the reasons, I love the underdog story. I love the story of the guy who, like Mel Gibson, or like he fucked up really bad, said some really screwed up things, and now he's trying to not only save his career but make himself a better person. Humanity in general loves the underdog story, but somehow we switched to that to just never mind this person. Can go.
And let me give you this as an example, because there is that. I'm for two things here, like the, hey, I had a dark moment and said some shit that I didn't mean, and it came out a way, and I've hurt some people, and I entirely apologize. And then there's the, hey, you know what? I used to think this way, and now I don't. The room to grow kind of thing. Like what human is perfect? You know what I mean? Like as long as you're giving it a shot, you recognize, oh, I mean, which one of us thinks we weren't dumb when we were 20?
So, ideologies change, and I think you hit it right with when you said, what we remember, what we thought at 20, we're not thinking here at 30, or we're not thinking at 40, or not thinking at 70, or whatever it may be, right? It changes. And so you're absolutely right. I think that's all part of growth. Well, and let's hope it's not growth in the negative, but it can be. I mean, how many times you get hit over the head by the same group, let's just say, whatever it may be, before you go ahead and say, oh, they're all a bunch of jerks. Right? You can only take the damage so long before you get a certain opinion. And then it also has to do with social media has changed the world and has changed things so dramatically.
I would add also to that, like 24-hour news. I think those two things are the biggest change in culture.
So Ted Turner's the fault for all of this.
Scenarios.
Yeah.
Let me give you two scenarios. Okay. Person A is, a beloved person, actor. I was going to say politician.
Nobody loves politicians.
Beloved
so let's
politician.
go with actor, somebody that people generally like, and they don't know this person, but hey, person A has done some things, and hey, they've done this charity, and then they fucked up in some significant way, some sexual assault thing, or I mean something pretty shitty, and the world turns on them immediately. Oh my God, can you believe person A did,
X.
thing B? Yeah, thing X, yeah. And I'm never going to fucking watch this person again. What a piece of shit. And then, a week later they come out with some big statement of what, I can't even believe that X happened. I'm ashamed of myself. This is horrible. No excuses. Yada yada yada. The statement, and now some people are going to take that as oh, okay, this person's getting in front of a problem here. It's all just lip service. Okay, fair enough. But then there's the sincere version of that where I'm a benefit of the doubt kind of a person. I mean, there would be, regardless of that, so many people who just write person A off, right? Now, person B was a fucking Nazi, a full-blown fucking left pec swastika, fucking card-carrying Nazi, American History X style. That person meets a black person or a Jewish person one day, and it changes their opinion. They then go and get their tattoos removed and say, I have been living wrong this entire time. I see the error of my ways. The internet, the world, at least this country, would fucking prop person B up on their shoulders. This is our new hero. Look at how people can change. That's the hypocrisy that fucking bugs me.
Mm.
It's the you would take this person who lived a horrible way for 30 years of their life, and then at 31 years old, they realize they've been a piece of shit. And then, hey, look at how good this person is. I've seen all kinds of YouTube videos of the ex-white supremacist guy comes out and he's like, oh my God, I used to go beat up minorities on the street just because, I didn't know any better, yada, yada, yada. Or the ex-gang member, the ex-drug dealer, murderers who've recanted their murdering ways. And society's like, oh, look at he's learned things. Which, okay, fucking cool, man. Like, you again, benefit of the doubt. I'll take you at your word. I don't know you. But then person B, who's lived a great life for 30 years, just using that as a number, and 31 year, they have a shitty year and they go off the fucking reservation and they do some pretty shitty things. And then 32, they're like, oh my God, can you believe how much of a piece of shit I was at 31? You know what I mean? Like that 1 year writes this person off for the rest of everybody's life from, ever capitalizing on whatever talent they might have had, let's say. And
it seems to be it seems to be canceled on modern sensibilities, like things that are super like whatever the modern moray is or whatever people are against. It could be, oh, this guy has purple hair, and all of a sudden, that's the part I think is odd.
But here's the thing: is that nobody takes it in a case by case basis. You know what I mean? They'll hear the headline of "We hate this person now," and what I think it is the internet got a taste of power. It got a taste of what it's capable of. And it doesn't want to give up that power. It wants to wield that power and say like, oh yeah, no, we'll let you on our thing. We'll let you into our lives, but you fucking make one wrong step, buddy, and your ass is grass. Like you'll never work in this town again. They've become the shitty producer, that wants to hold somebody's job over their head kind of thing because they don't line up with the current ideology, which might be different 10 years from now. I've always been a pragmatist of like, hey, look, man, best idea wins. The science is going to be one thing or another, which is great. I'll follow that when it comes to all things practical. And then, my heart will lead me on a particular, social thing of like, hey, you know what? This is a space where science doesn't really, touch. So I have no particular basis. I can go through life without, marginalizing a group of people. Cool. Or if I find out I was marginalizing a group of people, that kind of sucks. I didn't mean to do that. Let me amend here,
So I believe that there isn't one of us that hasn't said something that we can look back and regret. Okay. That just happens. I mean, may have been in our youth, may have been in our misguided views at the time. May it be because we were with a group of people that, you kind of went, oh, that was cool, we're with them. And then you look back at that later and go, boy, that was pretty bad. And so,
luckily nobody records my conversations.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the internet has changed all of that. An interesting example of about when should we I try to cancel my own brain from saying certain things.
It's not often you hear the old man hem and haw.
But the point, I guess the example I was going to use is just recently we deported back to Poland, I believe, a former Nazi guard at 95 years of age, right? And we say we're kicking him out of the United States where he has spent the last 50 some years living.
We don't have room at Guantanamo.
So in his case, and what we've done as a country for the most part is we've anytime we have caught, depending on their what they did and what their age is, anytime we've caught an ex-Nazi living in the United States, we've deported them to wherever and let that country they deported them to handle out the sentence of whatever they should face.
And I think. Sure. I was going to say, I think with some things, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to say, actually I did, but for some things, I think the crime is so outrageous that they don't have a choice.
So so exactly. So you get to a point where you have done something so onerous, so bad, so awful in your early life that there may never be any forgiveness for what you've done.
Yeah. Hey, fucking war crimes are war crimes. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, so there are things that we do not forgive, no matter what it may be.
Are we just a more sensitive
society? And I like
society?
the idea of like, hey, Nazis, even if you're 98 years old, if we find you, that's your ass.
Right.
Like, oh, you thought you were going to get a pass because you're old? Nope. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So there are things. Now, I am going to say an interesting thing that's starting to happen in the Jewish community is that one of the things that they've been worried about is that they've been saying that people are using the term Nazis and, in so many ways using the negative that they've actually believing that that term is losing its shock value, shall we say?
Sure.
Oddly enough, I have a wrestling thing about this.
A wrestling thing. Leave it to John for wrestling.
Well, I'm a huge fan of wrestling, or I was. But there's a thing in wrestling where the bad guy is the bad guy for so long, and eventually the crowd is for him. And then at some point you have to turn the bad guy into a good guy, or you're going to lose the crowd. Because it's the same way. People start saying Nazi, 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 and eventually at some point there's going to be a turn one way or another. You're going to have to be the heel or the bad guy is going to have to do something even worse, or he's going to have, or that bad guy is going to have to be a good guy so the crowd stays with him. And I think that's similar to the Nazi thing, to the word.
Well, I mean, it's already to a point where if I hear somebody be like, "Oh, this guy's a Nazi," I'm like, "Wait, like a Nazi or like a Nazi?"
Yeah,
you know, I'm already having to do the math of like, "Wait, what do you mean by Nazi?"
No, 100%. Is he raising his arm in a salute, or is he trying to correct somebody's grammar?
Yeah, so isn't that right? And then start with Seinfeld, soup Nazi.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the qualifier for the record, like the grammar Nazi, the soup Nazi. You know, hey, fuck it, that's just me having fun. This guy's a Nazi because he doesn't agree with whatever, you know, something like that. That's when it gets ridiculous.
I think
their point. I think I think the Jewish community's point on coming out and talking about that term is just being used too much and not in the context that it's really meant to be used in, and they don't want to see it.
Thing.
Yeah. So anyway, I totally understand where they're coming from, and then the fact that term is, we went from free speech all the way to this. Boy, we call it what a circle we took on that one.
And
time for an ad.
I mean, bottom line, like that's part of free speech is I want you to be able to say like James was saying, like you have a right to be able to say stupid shit. Because I want to know exactly how stupid you are. I don't want you to have this conversation with other like-minded assholes in a basement somewhere. No, I want you to fly that Confederate flag, bro. I want to see from across the street to avoid your ass.
Yeah, well, there's
so talk about
as long as you're not flying it outside of a Capitol building, it's like cool.
So talk about avoiding. You can't.
Time for an ad.
Talk about avoiding. You can't avoid this. Do you want to keep up to date on the maddest of the mad at the MadTrio podcast? Check out our social media feeds on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or go to themadtrio.com.
So you missed last week, Ryan. One of the things I wanted to do is there's a sponsor I really want to get, and I can't find a way to do it. So I'm kind of a NASCAR fan, and Bristol last week was running the dirt, and probably the best NASCAR race I've watched in years, maybe even a decade. And one of the sponsors of a car was called Dude Wipes. And I thought, what a great sponsor for the show. I keep thinking, wouldn't this be a great opportunity? Now we're sponsored by Dude Wipes.
So what happens if we're sponsored by Dude Wipes and all of a sudden we got a female co-host?
That'd be fine. And my biggest worry is that I keep saying that I want Dude Wipes to be a sponsor, and they're going to give us a cease and desist order.
Hey, free speech?
I worry about that because they don't want to be involved with free speech, right? They don't want to go where we're going.
Are you kidding? Most guys, most guys I know, matter of fact, if they said a cease and desist, they'd probably be losing some sales.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we got to see some real money before it really becomes an issue, because it all comes down to money. There really isn't any.
Have you tried offering sexual favors?
Yeah, I mean, what?
James, you're up. You're the person as far as operating sexual favors. We all voted you're the person who's going to have to pay that one.
Did you find any news to talk about, James?
I'm going to start nice.
Take one for the team, James.
Brian, how were the earthquakes today?
Oh yeah, he had a small one. 4.5?
Earthquake.
Yeah.
It's not exactly. It's not a 5.0.
That was the news, and I'm like looking at it. I'm like,
wait,
you're kidding me.
There was actually like an earthquake today? Where?
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah.
There was
where was it?
earthquakes today. I have to go back and look.
Gotta go find the epicenter.
The article says, but I was like, so it says there's a 4.0 magnitude center just east of the Los Angeles International Airport. That was followed by a 2.5, and I'm like,
right there under Ryan's bed in Monticello.
These are
the airport. East of LAX is probably, as the crow flies, maybe 25 miles.
There you go. You were the epicenter. What the heck did you do?
25 miles or 12 hours.
Yeah.
Hey, look, depending on the time of day, I'll get there in a half an hour.
But I've got another question for you, being an LA native. So, have you ever seen somebody steal an emergency vehicle and go on a high-speed chase with it?
With somebody in the back?
Like actually seen it with my own eyes, or seen like the
on the news
footage?
On the news is fine.
On the news or with your own eyes?
Dude, we were the first place to televise car chases.
Well, O.J. Simpson made that thing
weren't
really
they
famous.
doing it before that?
Well, they were.
Before that.
They were, but man, once O.J. hit, it was like every car chase all the time, 24-hour coverage.
True.
Yeah, they break into your favorite show that you're watching just because, hey, this one might end with some crazy shit.
That's right.
We'll get back to your Days of Life marathon and.
But yeah, I would mix with the train tracks, dude. Like that train will put out more than a 4.0 when it rides by.
Good point.
Dallas,
I don't get out of
Texas.
bed for less than a 5.5.
Yeah.
And even then, I might kind of just like look up. Matter of fact, I think the last one we had around here, it actually kind of stripped pretty good. All I did was like I leaned up on an elbow in bed, and my girlfriend was out in the living room. And I just waited to hear if she said anything, and she didn't say anything, and I went back to sleep.
Exactly. That's how you deal with
like, ow, I'm trapped under rubble. I would have probably got up, but nothing.
It's a good thing you don't have a really big CRT TV.
Well, it's interesting. In 1971, we had 71. We had the 7.2 in Northridge. That was a biggie.
Yeah, Northridge was a big one. I remember that one. I was fucking 9 years old when that happened, and that got me up.
Oh yeah, that was a biggie. I was living in Santa Monica at the time, and threw my ass right out of bed.
Was it?
Yeah, you were a little closer than me. I was in Alhambra.
Northridge? That was the one that was in the 80s, wasn't it?
No, Northridge was 94.
Yeah. So
we talked about this somewhat recently.
Because there's been two. Well,
there's been two Northridge.
No, there was two really, really big ones. There was one that was in the 80s. I don't remember where that was, though.
Because the old guy mentioned something, in the 70s, and he said he was living in Santa Monica.
71. Maybe the old guy's losing his mind. But anyway, I think you're right as far as magnitudes. I mean, at certain points, you get so used to them that it's like,
yeah.
Well,
the magnitudes are actually exponential. You know what I mean?
Oh,
it's not like
no, the difference between a 4 and a 5 is not just a number. It's
it's
right?
not just a 1. It's not like a 10 scale, and this one's a 4, this one's a 5.
Right.
Like,
it goes up. It's a huge difference between a 4 and a 5.
Big
and then you go from a 4 to a 7.
A 5 and a 6.
Right.
Is the difference between you kind of like, what is there an earthquake? And then you running outside.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyway, that I guess that was James. That's James's story. You're supposed to be talking about this, James.
Oh,
this is your earthquake story.
It's your time to shine.
I had already moved. I moved on past the earthquake story.
You're done with it already. You've had enough of earthquake. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he just wanted me to say that for all of our listeners in the Midwest. It's apparently about the same way they think about tornadoes. Like yeah, they happen. It's not really something I think about a lot.
It's not worth to get off to bed if it's not an EF3.
I got to tell you, I met a person one time that lived in the tornado alley areas of Arkansas, and comes through all of that. And about where they live, and they talked to us. Oh, you're from California. She said, oh my God, earthquakes! They're horrible. How could you live out there? They're terrible things. I'm looking at this person that lives in Tornado Alley, and I'm going,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on. We all have something.
Well,
I'll
tell you what. I had a friend of mine from high school. It ended up through a series of events. Ended up going to a boys' school in Joplin, Missouri. Now, if the name Joplin, Missouri means anything to you, it is because they had an F5 roll through that place that took Joplin, Missouri effectively off the map.
Right. Right.
I mean, anybody who hasn't seen, seriously, YouTube Joplin, Missouri. I want to say this was 04, 05. Nah, it had been a little before that, but little while back. But I mean, just something out of a movie. It was really something out of Twister, the way this thing wrecked this town. He lived there for a couple of years. was there, after the school and whatnot, stuck around there. After that happened, didn't even look for another place in Missouri. Just moved right back to California. He's like, I'll take earthquakes any fucking day.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have
Exactly.
an earthquake once a week, and that would be preferable to what happened that one day.
Well, so I'm going to correct
Yeah.
it. The earthquake in 1971 I was talking about was called the San Fernando earthquake at that time. I misspoke, so I just made a correction on that one.
I was going to say,
Okay, well, hey, is San Fernando Valley is where Northridge is.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
easy
So
to say.
it's
Yeah.
I was going to say, because you can design a house to, deal with a great deal of lateral forces. Hurricane force winds. There's only so much you can do without the roof just
Well, you
taking
see
off.
the way they're building these houses now, they're all, the foundations are like, they're huge, like what for airports. I mean, they're stuck to the ground. The whole buildings are block. They've got these new ways of attaching roofs that can handle hurricane gale forces, and so they are building, places that you can survive that in. But can you imagine having to do that?
The construction workers are going
Of
to
course.
run out of business because they probably get stuck rebuilding the same homes every year.
Well, so the other problem, the same thing in
Well-
California, we have all these earthquake codes that we've got to build to, so that
Right after the '94 quake, the amount of people they got a job doing earthquake rehab.
right.
Hey, all of these stone walls crumbled. We're going to rebuild the stone wall, but we're going to rebar the shit out of them.
Right.
All of these houses got to be up to a different kind of code. I mean, people worked for years. My dad was in the elevator trade. The amount of elevator repairs this dude had to do after that was crazy.
I imagine.
For years and years and years, going into these old buildings, making sure that they're all good to go for that next 6.5 or 7.
Right. So anyway, yeah, that was something. All right, James.
I have another story.
Well, wait, James, are you done with that story?
I wasn't even talking about earthquakes anymore.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you
I
didn't
was
fall
trying to
asleep.
talk- I was trying to talk about the Dallas, Texas had a freaking ambulance stolen that was on a high-speed chase for 2 hours.
So did
Today.
the helicopter
But-
follow them all for 2 hours and film it?
No, they blew it up.
Oh, they blew it up? Seriously?
No, they hit it with spike strips.
Oh.
I wish they blew it up.
That
There
does
may have
sound
been
like
an
a
innocent-
Texas-ass thing to do.
I have to admit, though, I
It
never
would be.
the 2 hours is a lot more than I would have thought that thing's gas tank would have taken. So I'm
That's a
more,
lot of patience. 2 hours of following this thing
yeah.
without,
Yeah.
putting spike strips out or putting a barrier out or getting something out to stop it. So they spike stripped it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, a lot of what they do in California is they're waiting to where it gets to an area that they can do a pit maneuver, safely without, being in
I
some
don't know if you can do
residential
a pit
area.
maneuver on
Ambulance.
an ambulance like that very easily.
That's what I was kind of wondering. Can
No,
you
you probably
pit one?
roll it.
Yeah, they're pretty,
I mean,
the
they
modern
are
ones
pretty-
seem awfully high-centered.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Because you look at that
I
box
was going
it's
to
on.
say some of the older ones are definitely low center of gravity.
The older ones would have been tougher. I think the newer ones might be easier. They're so high-centered. But okay, so that's James' story.
So
No,
what is? I got one. So what is Kate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis, Jack Black, Haley Bennett, along with Green Blatt and
all
Florin
offensive comedians.
and Florin Martineau have to do
all
with-
offensive comedians. All have said things that they should never have
with
said.
Eli Roth.
Oh, I don't know what that one.
They're making a star-studded Borderlands movie to begin production
Who the
soon.
heck gives a darn? I see. I'm being PC, so I'm going to
Is there-
redo
is there-
this.
is there a
Who
reason-
the fuck cares?
That's better.
Okay, but wait. Is it like Borderlands
It's a live action. And
video game?
yeah, it's behind the scenes of the photo confirming production Eli Roth's live action film adaptation of the hit video game series Borderlands. The only reason you should care is because every video game movie has failed miserably.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see
I
if
don't know.
this.
The Mortal Kombat looks pretty badass.
Well, the new
one.
But if you look at the ones that have come before, you had Mortal Kombat. The previous one,
Yeah, they were pretty shitty.
The two didn't do too well. Uwe Boll made 2, made Ring Commander.
Are we really going to get into things that nobody gives a goddamn about?
You'd be surprised.
Always.
I mean, look, case
I'm
in
sorry.
point, I just watched Monster Hunter yesterday with Mila Jovovich.
Mhm.
And what a shitty movie.
You're
You know,
shocked. It's Mila Jokovic.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually,
Hey,
she was
hey,
the better
Fifth
part of it.
Element was
It had Tony
badass.
Khan, so there was that.
The only reason I say people should care because apparently last time I heard video games are considerably larger than like the film industry.
Well, yeah, they always
gaming's
have
a
been.
big
They
deal.
outgross movies by a lot forever.
Yeah.
So this,
But, you piss off 9 people when you do a Borderlands movie.
My point exactly. I said my part with that one.
I would say the same thing if you did, I don't know, pretty much any book adaptation. I mean, most people are just in it for the entertainment versus they're in for, a really great adaptation.
Yeah, but a book has a very established narrative. I mean, most of the best movies I've ever seen were book adaptations. Because the source material was deep enough. It had enough context and good story.
It would swing both ways.
Video games are cutscenes to get you to kill the next guy. Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
I would say that
book adaptations are either fantastic or horrible, and games are just rotten.
Yeah, but a lot of the problems that you like very few people. The ones who are pissed off at the movie adaptation of a book are the ones who read the book. But the guy who never read the book and just watched the movie, like, oh my God, this movie was dope. And then they talk to the guy who read the book. They're like, it wasn't as good as the book.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't. You're absolutely right.
The best one of that is Tolkien, because there's like people apparently his whole job is to be a Tolkien expert, and they bitch about Peter Jackson's versus the book. And
well, I mean, that part's okay. Everybody can get into it, and that I think that's actually good for whatever it may be, because you get into the discussion as, was it as good as the book? Yes or no? Did it follow the book? Yes or no? Was the book bad to begin with? If you had a lousy book to begin with and you made a movie out of it and thinking you're going to make a better movie than what the book was, that's another issue.
And then how many of the book people get the movie people into like, oh man, you got to read the book though. And then how many of them go buy the book? And then vice versa.
Yeah. And then you can't beat your imagination. So that it's very difficult to put something on a screen to watch versus what your mind can come up with when you read the book. Two different things entirely.
Yeah.
So,
Lord of the Rings benefited from the scope that they were able to pull off. Sure, imagination, sure, but in your head, kind of keeping all those moving parts together with what they were doing, it doesn't have the same sort of narrative flow as a film does. And they obviously gave themselves enough time to do it
and enough
but
money to
pros
do
and
it.
cons to each.
Well, there's been movies where they've come up with things. I've read the book, I watched the movie, and I thought I would have never come up with that. They did a great job.
Name one.
Right. So
right now, name one.
Name a movie.
Yeah, that proves your point.
Predator.
It was a book.
Yeah, it actually was based off of. Yeah, it was based off. Anyway, they did a much better job of coming up with the creature than I would have ever imagined.
Well,
they told you what the creature did.
That was a genius of Stan Winston.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I thought anyway. But
one of the greatest creature feature guys ever.
Gene Simmons is leaving your area there, Ryan. He's out of LA. He says he can't stand the traffic anymore.
And other things.
Oh man, the exodus that has been happening from California just this last couple of years has been pretty crazy.
Well, Gene,
and a lot of it for political reasons.
Well, yeah, but Gene Simmons, all right, of Kiss, right? Gene Simmons is putting up his 14,000 square foot home that he has there in LA. He says, I'm done with traffic. So where does he decide to move? He's going to move to the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe. And he bought himself a little 2-acre spread over there and is trying to buy some more. And all I can think of is, has he ever been there during the height of summer tourist season
what I'm thinking.
or winter to realize how bad the traffic is in Lake Tahoe?
Crap, he's moving.
Well, I wonder how much of a summer home / winter home a guy he is.
I don't know. He says this is going to be his permanent residence. He's done with LA.
Wow. So him and Stone Cold Steve Austin, which recently moved, he bought a place in
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
He moved to Nevada. He owns 2 houses in Los Angeles, and he bought a third one in Nevada, and he's full-time in Nevada, like near Gardnerville.
So did you see the commercial with him, Ice-T and Vanilla Ice? It's all based on ice. So Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ice-T, and Vanilla Ice have all done a commercial together.
Two of those I can see. I can't see them dealing with Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, well,
Have you
baby.
Have you seen the Stone Cold TV show where he interviews people? He interviews Ice-T, and they take him to a gun range.
Oh, well, those two would probably, they were together when they did this commercial. It was Vanilla Ice. It was like in another part of the country when he was doing this commercial. They worked together.
Oh, I was going to say, I can't see them
they
dealing
did a
with
commercial together. I won't tell you the product because I could care less. But the fact is that it was kind of funny that they tied those three together.
Was it for an incontinence problem?
No,
product?
It wasn't. It has something to do with an iced drink.
Probably should have been.
For men who leak a little.
Well, let's just bring up all the old either rappers or wrestlers that we can, and let's make a commercial that's relevant for anything.
Well, yes, but you're also talking. Well, the only reason I brought up him is you're talking about Gene Simmons, who was the bassist for Kiss, one of the world's largest bands, and one of the largest wrestlers in the history of the industry. So it fits. He was on the same level, different industry. You can't go anywhere in the world and not know somebody doesn't know who Steve Austin is or Gene Simmons. And to quote Paul Stanley, it's because of his ego.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, I'm so used to society trying to sell my childhood back to me. Remember that thing you liked? Nostalgia. Pay $20 and you can feel that way again. I mean, that's just the way it is. And,
speaking of selling your childhood,
sometimes I'm not, but I'm not surprised anymore.
So speaking of selling your childhood, Ryan, when were you born? 85, 86?
85, yeah.
So if your mom had bought a Super Mario's Brother cartridge in 1986 to give to you and forgot about it 35 years ago,
and found it in the attic,
went to sell it.
Oh my goodness.
Never used, never opened.
Unsealed in the box.
I was thinking is like unopened, still in the original packaging,
right.
Just never touched for 35
years.
How
much do you think that was worth?
Oh, man.
Because one of them was sold on Friday.
$600,000?
Millions.
Wow. No, Ryan is 60,000 short. $660,000.
Good job, Ryan. Wow.
Yeah, that's
can you imagine?
That sounds about right.
Now they have to do is now they have to do is find an NES that actually works correctly.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Well, you never open that game. You buy the game, you put it in a lucite case, and you get an emulator like everybody else does.
So you talked about that. I remember when Steel Battalion came out. It's that giant Xbox controller.
Oh yeah.
I bought it opening day. I saw a couple of people buy two of them, one to play and one to keep and pack aside. I'm saying, yep. I don't know. Is this game going to be that rare that you're willing to spend like $600 to, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was still like $250.
Think about this though. How much do you think that cartridge, brand new from 1986, cost?
$70?
I was thinking around 80 probably. I would say between 50 and 80, somewhere around there.
For sure,
I don't think Rob's memory is that good.
I can remember saying, I'm not spending that kind of money on my kids for a stupid game cartridge.
So in 1986, this person bought it as a Christmas gift, placed it in their desk drawer, and forgot about it for 35 years.
Oh my gosh. So not even in some stupid, dusty, dank, dark, damp, just in a desk drawer, safe and sound, huh?
Yeah, the person who said they don't want to be identified said, I never thought anything about it.
And they probably never thought it would be worth anything.
So according to this, new games were around $60 in the 80s. It's about $130 adjusted for inflation. So according to Google, so mileage may vary.
That's a lot of money. I remember when those game cartridges came out and you guys wanting them, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I'm not spending that kind of money on you guys.
But if you had bought it and never given it to him and kept it nicely,
Yeah, I
that
should
would have been a hell of an investment.
Oh, well, now,
Well,
I'm thinking
how,
about.
how many people do exactly like John was saying? I mean, comic books, that's the classic
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
You get 2 issues.
Oh yeah,
That's-
You
absolutely.
get one to read and one to stash
Put
in
away.
a plastic sleeve forever.
I mean,
And then when you're 60 and you pass it down to your kids or something, you kind of thumb through them like, oh, fuck, I forgot I bought this #1 issue of this thing that everybody will
I have to say sorry to all the comic book geeks that I thought were totally out of their mind back in the day.
I know, right?
Right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I ever made fun of you.
Oh, yeah.
This,
I mean, I wish
Sorry,
I had
I
that kind of follow through and foresight.
this is the reason why I bought Sequest DSV comic book number
Oh
1.
yeah. There's a good one for you. Sequest.
I remember buying it going, this
Still waiting
is
for that to appreciate.
You're still
value.
waiting.
I
You'll be waiting for
actually-
a long time.
I actually bought it at the time thinking this is going to go one of 2 ways. I can't wait to see how this goes. But I also have like X Factor number 99 and 100 thinking maybe this will be, Of course, I've been in my garage and other spaces for about 30 years.
Hey,
so.
you need to come up with the Spider-Man, with the very first edition that Spider-Man ever came out. And
Or Superman.
well, so one of the things about Spider-Man is, he was a sub player. He was not a big deal, and he came
Yeah.
out. I forgot which comic book it came out of, but he actually came out fairly early and never really came back up until many, many years later. And apparently, that comic book where you can find where his very first appearance in a comic book. If you have that comic book unsealed, still white pages and all that, I guess it's worth a ton of money.
Yeah.
I saw a little clip on it. I don't know which show was talking about it, but it might have been the Pawn Stars show.
So Spider-Man's first appearance in comic book sells for $454,100. It's Amazing Fantasy number 15.
Was it a 5 cent or 10 cent?
Still,
Can you imagine a
Mario
nickel?
Brothers.
I don't see it. It doesn't. In 1962 is when it said is when it came out.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. I
And
can't imagine the amount of comic books
like that. You're definitely going to have more misses than hits.
And
You're going to collect the equivalent of fucking Beanie Babies and take a bath on it. But
or Sequest DSV
Right.
DSV number 1, and there was never a number
Right.
2 or a number 3.
Yeah, I mean,
but all in hopes that you get that one that just like oh my god, I had no idea that this would be the one that stuck around, and
yep.
See,
now I'm going to sell it and pay for my kids to go to college.
and now
Exactly.
people give me crap for collecting
Cabbage Patch dolls. You just love those. It was Cabbage Patch
Shut up.
dolls.
I've got I'm like that former post office worker. I've got closets full of them. I actually collected Disney memorabilia from a specific year, and hopes that at some point in time it'll be worth money. I have this huge.
It's funny.
I have a certain year Disney map actually framed on my wall right now.
So Disney,
Nice.
Disney stuff is very interesting because it has turned out to be very collectible. All the older.
I'm having problems looking for the sister book to the one of the things I'm looking for.
Oh yeah, and then you're going to have to pay for it if you want it now. I mean, things that were. Some of the stuff you showed me, the things that we just threw away. I mean, stuff that they handed you free at Disneyland are now selling for hundreds of dollars. It just blows my mind.
I saw on eBay, I was looking for something and I came across not J.C. Penney's, a Penny's catalog from like 1965. It's like, wow. Or Montgomery Ward's from like a certain age. I'm like, I would love to buy that just to show a kid, hey, what do you think of the, what?
What kind of store was that? I never heard of it.
or Mervin's, which is the weirdest name for a store ever.
Mervin's. The one that always got me, and I think it's mostly still down in Southern California, was Pep Boys.
I think there's one I know of in Sacramento.
Oh, you guys don't? I thought that was like a nationwide thing.
It is, but it's
That
not.
was like a SoCal thing.
They're not in Northern California.
There's one.
There's one.
That I know of,
But-
it's by one of the places I used to work, because I remember driving by
And
it
it's not
going,
in the best part of town.
no,
But
because I remember driving by it going, what the fuck?
yeah. Anyway, it's interesting because as a kid, as a teen, having to work on my car to keep it running, I was at Pep Boys all the time, getting parts. Yeah, thanks. Way back.
I swear, okay. There used to be these commercials on when I was a kid, and I'm sure there's a version of them on now, probably, if daytime TV is still a thing, with this guy named Crazy Gideon. Okay. Now, I think everybody in this country and possibly all over the world, in any industrialized country, has probably a version of the quote Crazy Gideon, guy who does those homemade, basically commercials, funded himself kind of deal. And he's like, I've got these TVs. This is priced at $299. That's so crazy. I'm going to break it. And, tosses the TV off of like a bridge or something, or hits it with a hammer. And, he's like, I can sell these prices because I'm crazy. And,
I don't think we had one up here, did we?
Now,
I don't remember
one. I was convinced that was a nationwide thing. I thought when I was a kid that what I was seeing on my TV was exactly the same thing that dude in New York or Florida or Wisconsin was seeing. And we all had the same commercials and whatnot.
Right
down to like the local big car dealerships and things like that.
Cal Worthington was the one that I thought.
Cal Worthington Ford.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, anybody outside of Los Angeles County is going to be like, who the hell's Cal Worthington?
Or California
and they're thinking
in general.
themselves, wait, I don't know who Crazy Gideon is, but we got like a Crazy Steve or a Crazy whoever. And yeah, that commercial sounds familiar, but my guy was called this. So I'm like telling people like, as a teenager, like, oh yeah, Crazy Gideon. And they're like, who? I'm like, the guy from the commercials. They're like, what are you talking about? And how disappointed I was when I found out that not everybody knew Crazy Gideon now.
That's when you realize that the local, that the local market had their local guys, whatever it may have been. Because
the whole idea of a local commercials like flooded into my mind, and all of a sudden it's like I could see the Matrix. It's weird.
Yeah, well, so a good example of that was the midnight screenings of all the horror movies. On, Friday night, Saturday night, whatever it would have been. Creature features. There was always a local creepy person that did. Well, Elvira became the big thing, right? When she was doing
Danny
it.
Coker, the guy from Count's Customs, used to be Count Cool Rider in Las Vegas.
He was the guy in Las Vegas, and so all the local markets had a creepy guy that always did the late night horror movies. Which were so much fun. What the heck happened to all of that?
A guy,
those nights were great.
A guy at work.
I know, right?
A guy.
The idea of something just coming on TV, like, I'm going to watch this now.
All the B movie terrible stuff was
a
fun.
guy at work actually. Him and I actually had a conversation about how there's nothing like that anymore, and he was wondering if anybody will ever bring it back. And I said the only way they'll probably do it, and if they can get the license and the clearances, would be on like a Twitch. Because I don't think, because back then they used to do it because they needed because if they were close to being a 24-hour station, or if it was the end of the station being coverage. On, they had something that they needed a spot to fill.
Play, right.
So I think
it's the equivalent of the late night radio guy. It's like, dude, they'll hire to do that.
Art Bell.
Art Bell, man. Hell yeah.
Art Bell, what a great guy.
Talking about the shadow people.
Oh man, I'm telling you,
or the lizard men.
I am the least superstitious person ever. I fucking loved listening to Art Bell when I was working nights.
Oh, yeah.
Driving around in the middle of the night, listening to this dude talk about like lizard people, or at the very least, giving the caller the time of day.
Yeah.
When no one else on the planet would talk about said lizard people or hollow earth or, some alien abduction. Oh man, it was the best.
It was super, and he came out of Pahrump, Nevada. Now back then, back then, Pahrump was like one light, one gas station, one market, and that was it. And that was all you went through it on the way off of 395, I believe, to Las Vegas. Middle of nowhere.
You can still sneeze and miss it.
And no, it's a grown-up area. Oh yeah, it's becoming like a suburb of Las Vegas now.
Last time I went through there, if you hiccup, you would have missed it.
Oh yeah. It's huge. It's huge now.
So what they need Pahrump, Nevada, home of Art Bell.
Yeah, they should do that. Yeah. Well, you have the Air Force Base out there. Edward Air Force Base is it Edwards?
Edwards, I think, is a little closer to L.A. No, shit, it might be Edwards.
Anyway,
yeah, because George is up in the high desert. Yeah, I think it's Edwards.
Yeah. Anyway, it's so you get a lot of military families and all of that in those areas, and so, but that was part of the reason he moved there because he could see, quote unquote, supposedly see Area 51 right? And you would see all the flying saucers.
What
and all this stuff.
it really was is nobody would hire him to be on a midnight station, so he had to find some place in the middle of nowhere that would hire him.
The guy came out of nowhere and got syndicated and got big, and what a following he had, and what fun it was to listen to his show.
And that's just, I mean, I think half the people, and I'm not going to speculate on his demographics, but, half the people, it seemed like were just all in on everything he was talking about. And the other half were just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is a conversation I'm here.
Exactly.
And I don't think he believed in the majority, if not all of the things that people were talking about. But he, like I said, gave him the time of day. He's like, hey man, I'm with you. What do you got? Yeah. Let's go. Let's get into it.
I do believe though that him and his show is solely responsible for a lot of bad midnight trips. There was some guy going, dude, this is awesome, takes a hit of acid or does something, dude, let's listen to this, and the next thing you know, the guy's in the corner going, the lizard people are coming for me.
I don't know. I just thought between his voice and the way, he was a big smoker, and the way he did everything, it was just it was really, really cool at the time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, regardless of your opinions on the topics. It was something else, man.
He would, the people he'd get on and the so-called experts that would talk about stuff and all the conspiracy,
which was really Billy Bob, who worked down the street, the gas station.
Could have been, but it doesn't matter.
It was probably some intern. Who cares?
Who cares? It was great, and I don't think there's anything. Is there anything like that now?
It's probably a podcast reasonably.
Because you can find it.
Yeah.
If you could find
I'm sure there is, like our show. Nobody will listen to
it.
And
that's
we have listeners. Usually they hate Ryan.
It's all too compartmentalized. When something came on the TV or if it was on the radio, it's like, okay, I've got two choices. I can listen to this crazy shit, or I can watch this dumb shit movie, or I can just turn the TV off. Well, that's not happening. So I guess we're in for the ride.
You're kind of forced
to. Every now and again, you're forced to. If you want to be entertained, it's like, hey, look, you can always turn it off and go mow the lawn.
So
or you can watch this crazy daytime soap opera, and then next thing you know, half an hour in, you're like, I'm strangely into this show right now.
I never actually listened to them. However, I remember my mom's comments every time the old guy would like want to listen to this. You could almost hear her like, no.
She put in earplugs. I love to listen to it.
It was
it really. God, I don't know how we stayed married all these 40-some years. But anyway,
so ladies and gentlemen, we are actually 7 minutes over time.
7 minutes. You're gonna have to edit out.
So do us a favor. Stop by Audacity.com or their Facebook page and buy a pack, or check out their monthly game nights. You just miss a chance to win a free game on previous Saturday. And for the California Pariah, the Fat Man, the Old Guy, and Ryan, as always, thank you for listening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.